The U.S. is in a fierce and escalating standoff with China, and the Trump administration is aggressively prioritizing its anti-China policies, making them a central focus of its diplomatic and economic strategy. But with the presidency vacant, the Speaker of the National Assembly, who isn't even the president, decided to lead a group of lawmakers on an official visit to China. Even without being the president, the speaker holds considerable influence, and their actions are widely seen as representing Korea's position on the global stage. Yet choosing to visit China at this moment is a reckless and treacherous move that could seriously strain relations with key allies. Pro-China stance is the current global climate could seriously damage relations with the U.S. The U.S. views China as its biggest geopolitical threat, and the Trump administration is likely to push its anti-China stance even more aggressively. Yet the Speaker of the National Assembly and lawmakers visiting China at this moment could easily be interrupted by the U.S., as Korea not maintaining diplomatic balance but rather shifting closer to China. The Trump camp is highly unlikely to see this move in a positive light. As soon as Trump returned, every country initially tried to challenge his authority, but within just a few hours, they all completely backed down and surrendered. If Trump perceives Korea as merely struggling under China's influence rather than actively siding with it, that could actually be a relief for us. What we should be generally concerned about is ensuring that Trump does not suspect Korea of willingly becoming a pawn or subordinate of China. That's right, at this moment Korea is, in the simplest terms, completely screwed. And to make matters worse, even lawmakers from Kuminhim are involved, specifically that shameless woman Bae Hyun-jin and a man named Lee Hyun-sung. Mark my words, I will personally make sure the Trump administration is informed about your actions so that you face severe consequences, no matter what it takes. The Speaker of the National Assembly has no direct authority over foreign affairs, yet they visited China as if they were the president. South Korea's diplomacy is primarily led by the president and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, so it is highly unusual for the Speaker to visit China as if leading an official diplomatic delegation. Moreover, the fact that they visited China first, not the U.S., carries significant diplomatic symbolism. The Trump camp could easily suspect that South Korean government is disregarding the U.S. and prioritizing China instead. Right now, China is actively trying to pull South Korea into its sphere of influence. Amid its ongoing confrontation with the U.S., China is making strategic moves to bring South Korea under its influence. If South Korea's speaker voluntarily visits China, reinforcing ties with Beijing, it could lead the Trump camp to perceive South Korea as a nation leaning towards China. If the Trump administration considers South Korea a key member of its anti-China alliance, this visit directly contradicts U.S. expectations. In conclusion, visiting China at this moment is so reckless that calling it insanity wouldn't be an exaggeration. It completely ignores the current geopolitical reality. The Trump camp is highly likely to strongly criticize this move, probably interpreting it as South Korea drifting away from the anti-China alliance. How will Trump perceive this situation? 1. Trump will see South Korea moving closer to China as a highly negative development. Since his presidency, Trump has viewed China as the greatest threat and has expected South Korea to stand firm with the U.S. in its anti-China stance. However, the fact that South Korea's speaker chose to visit China first instead of the U.S. is likely to be interpreted by Trump as a clear signal that Korea is aligning more closely with China. As a result, the Trump camp may take a much tougher stance on its relationship with South Korea moving forward. 2. Trump is likely to see this visit as South Korea outright disregarding the United States. If South Korea appears to prioritize its relationship with China over its alliance with the U.S., Trump could view it as a betrayal that destabilizes the alliance. More importantly, Trump has a history of reacting aggressively when allies fail to take a clear and firm stance alongside the U.S. Therefore, there is a very high chance that the Trump camp will interpret this visit in an overwhelmingly negative light. 3. The Trump administration could see this visit as a sign that South Korea is breaking away from the anti-China alliance. While Trump sees South Korea as a key U.S. ally in Asia, this visit, if perceived as Korea strengthening ties with China, could lead to a serious loss of trust. In other words, this move could raise suspicions within the Trump administration that Korea is distancing itself from the anti-China coalition. If the Trump camp takes issue with this shift, South Korea could face real consequences in its future relationship with the U.S. The conservative base must speak out to ensure Trump's camp trusts South Korea. It is crucial to prevent this visit from leaving a negative impression on the Trump administration and to clearly emphasize that our stance is completely different from theirs. You must stress that the alliance with the U.S. remains a top priority for South Korea. We need to demonstrate that Trump has a strong support base in South Korea. The message that South Korean citizens still stand with Trump administration must be actively spread. Pro-US conservative politicians must make their voices heard. We must prevent South Korea from being perceived as a pro-China nation due to the reckless actions of certain politicians. South Korea's conservative politicians must openly emphasize the importance of US-Korea relations so that the Trump camp recognizes the presence of a strong pro-US conservative force in Korea. Strengthening connections with Trump camp is essential. South Korea's conservative base must strengthen media and political ties with the Trump camp to establish a direct relationship. To earn Trump's trust, we must deliver a strong message that South Korea's conservatives stand firmly with the United States. In conclusion, while this visit may lead the Trump administration to view South Korea negatively, if the conservative base actively works to correct this perception, it can actually strengthen Trump's trust in Korean conservatives. This means that every action taken by our freedom-loving citizens and politicians has become more crucial than ever.